Welcome to the episode where narrative and storytelling take a back seat. Here we will focus on the more academic side of history and discuss facts which we may have missed in the original video. Basically, this is the episode for the historian. To make our video on Shashank, we mainly relied on a book edited by Ramesh Chandra Majumdar titled The History of Bengal, Volume 1, Hindu Period. The book was published by the University of Dhaka, back in the day when its emblem looked a bit different. Wonder why they changed the symbol. Whatever the case, it was an early endeavor to write the history of Bengal on modern scientific lines. In the video, we said that Shashank was a vassal of the later Gupta Empire. While this is likely, the historical record coming from a seal matrix cut in a rock just mentions that Shashank was a vassal or Mahasamanta. A vassal of who? It does not say. However, it is to be noted that the place Shashank rose from was right next to the hub of the later Gupta Empire, and that empire was known to have many vassals. Chances are, Shashank was probably one of them. Still, there is a possibility that Shashank may have instead been a vassal of a previous king of Gauda, or even the Morkaris. We also indicate in the video that Shashank fought alongside Devagupta of Malava. This was by implication that since Shashank does eventually ally with Devagupta, who was a former vassal of the later Gupta Empire, it is likely that they may have known each other in their heyday when they were both vassals. It also seems like they may have been close, considering that Shashank spends his forces avenging his ally without even capitalizing on it to get some land for himself. In the video, we mentioned that the Bengali calendar was introduced by Shashank. While the historical record does not explicitly say that it was Shashank that introduced the calendar, this assertion is supported by two facts. The first is that year 0 of the Bengali calendar coincides with when Shashank is thought to have become the king of Gaur. The second is that nothing else interesting happened in Bengal. By implication, it appears it may have been a part of Shashank's nation-building tactics to introduce a Bengali calendar, so that Bengalis can point to another fact which distinguishes them from other people in the subcontinent. In the video, we mentioned that Shashank uses a mixture of diplomatic skills and military might to humble his neighbors. That is as specific as we can get for a good number of his conquests. We have a decent idea of the lands Shashank ruled over, but we don't have the details on how he got them. In the video, we hear of Shashank's proposal to Emperor Mahasenagupta to overpower the Kamrup kingdom with their combined military might. While this is how it went down in the Kamrup kingdom, we don't have any details of the conversation Shashank had with Mahasenagupta. A guess in hindsight is the best we could do. In the video, we mentioned that after defeating the Kamrup kingdom and slaying its king Sustitavarman, Shashank vassalizes the two remaining Varman princes out of his mercy. Needless to say, this could have merely been a calculated decision in order for Shashank to promptly focus on other conquests and not worry about fixing the power vacuum left in the wake of Sustitavarman's demise. In the video, we mentioned that Shashank has a conversation with Devagupta to invade the Morkaris, with Shashank's aims being to retake Magadh for the newly independent Bengali peoples, humble an enemy of the later Guptas, and take the spoils of war. Again, we do not know the details of the conversation Shashank would have had with Devagupta, nor do we know of Shashank's motives for launching the assault, if there was one. It could have been the case that the hold of the Morkaris over Magadh was weak at the time, and Shashank simply wanted to take Magadh from them. It could have also been the case that Shashank inherited the state of Magadh from the later Gupta Empire, and did not even need to take it from the Morkaris. Rather, the later Gupta Empire under Emperor Mahasenagupta may have already taken Magadh, and when Shashank broke free, he became king of both Magadh and Gauda. Obviously, with all these uncertainties, Shashank may have not actually conquered Magadh when he launched an invasion with his ally Devagupta, but he may have already had Magadh before that invasion. In the video, once Devagupta and Shashank conquered the Morkaris, the invasion of King Rajyavardhan of Thaneswar is made to sound as if it is solely because his sister, Rajyasri, was thrown into prison by Devagupta, and it was a coincidence that Rajyasri was the wife of the Morkari king. Though this adds drama, it skips over the fact that the marriage of Rajyasri to the Morkari king was likely a marriage to solidify an alliance between the throne of Thaneswar and the Morkaris. Accordingly, Rajyavardhan may have just acted to honor his alliance with the Morkaris. Furthermore, Devagupta's attack on the Morkris may have at least partially been motivated by his hatred of the kingdom of Taneswar, considering that they had a war with them previously. Moreover, the natural death of the king of Taneswar, who was Rajavardhan's father, may have given both Devagupta and Shashank the opportunity to strike the Morkris right when they lacked the protection of the experienced allied king. Overall, the kingdom of Taneswar under Rajavardhan may have not just been dragged into a war due to the imprisonment of Rajasri, but rather, the whole war of Devagupta and Shashank against the Morkris may have begun due to the death of Rajavardhan's father and the alliance between Taneswar and the Morkris. In the video, we describe brief details of the battle that went down between Rajavardhan and Devagupta. Whilst we know Rajavardhan's troops consisted of just cavalry, we don't have any details of the battle itself. Rajavardhan likely met Devagupta whilst he was on his way to invading Taneswar. The reason that Devagupta did not wait for Shashank before doing so could have been that he was confident in his own power, and also because he did not wish to give Shashank any part of the glory of invading Taneswar. This selfish motivation of Devagupta is given some credence when considering that if he was successful, Devagupta would have likely become a powerful emperor over northern India, a position which Harshavardhan takes later on in the video. As such, Devagupta and Shashank may not have been the brotherly allies as described in the video, but we may never know for certain. In the video, we mentioned that Shashank's troops swooped to avenge Devagupta and take down Rajavardhan on the same battlefield. The reality is, we don't know exactly when and where it happened, just that it would have happened soon after Devagupta was slain. In the video, we mentioned that Shashank ends Rajavardhan in battle. The primary text I'm relying on analyzes the sources and does come to that very same conclusion. Hyun Sang
Hyun Tsang, Hyun Tsang, Hyun Tsang, Hyun Tsang. And now you know more videos for you here to learn more correct pronunciations.
Yeah, that name. Shout out to my man Julian? Yeah, so that dude and Banabhata both, however, disagree that Shashank ends Rajavardhan in battle.
Hyun Tsang
Was a Buddhist Chinese pilgrim that came to India with the patronage of Harshavardhan, Rajavardhan's younger brother. And Banabhata was a writer and poet in Harshavardhan's court. Both were hardly non-biased sources and villainized Shashank to a notable degree. According to these sources, Shashank didn't best Rajavardhan in battle. Instead, Banabhata reports that Shashank tricked Rajavardhan into coming into Shashank's camp, unarmed, for Shashank to murder him.
Hyun Tsang
Reports that Rajavardhan's ministers handed Rajavardhan over to Shashank for Shashank to murder him. Both sources are vague and contradict each other in the details. Neither do they address why Shashank would need to play sly games with Rajavardhan when Shashank could just defeat Rajavardhan in an open battle. Considering that Rajavardhan just had a battle with only cavalry against Devagupta, his forces would have already been depleted for Shashank to score an easy victory against him. When noting the military genius Shashank would have had to expand his realm, as well as his unwillingness to capitalize on his success against Rajavardhan, it appears unlikely that Shashank would need to stoop as low as to murder Rajavardhan through trickery. Overall, the narrative makes more sense if you consider that
Hyun Tsang
and Banabhata have an inclination to depict Shashank in a negative light, and Shashank defeated Rajavardhan in an open battle. In the video, we describe that Shashank releases Rajasri and she disappears into a forest out of embarrassment. However, Banabhata just mentions that some guy called Gupta releases Rajasri and she ends up in that Vindhya forest. Of note is that the person that Shashank put in charge of Kanauj at the time was also named Gupta. Was it the same Gupta? Banabhata does not mention. In any case, it appears more likely that Shashank ordered this guy Gupta to release Rajasri over that scenario where Rajasri goes out on an epic prison break assisted by some random dude. In the video, We mentioned that Shashank ceases any further expansion as he had achieved his noble ambitions of creating a secure base for the Bengali people, reclaiming formerly lost lands, and neutralizing hostile powers. However, Shashank's motivations may have just been reflective of the reality that he had already expanded quite far from his base in Bengal. If he had expanded further, his supply lines may have become compromised. Additionally, further expansion in the west may have been especially detrimental if the Kamrup kingdom attacked the eastern flank of the Gorid kingdom, which they eventually did under King Bhaskaravarman. Accordingly, Shashank may have just turned back from attacking Thaneswar due to the fact that getting bogged down in such a war would have been disastrous for Shashank. In the video, we described the guerrilla warfare tactics used by Shashank to defend his kingdom against the armies of Harshavardhan and Bhaskaravarman whilst he secured himself in Gaur. We know some things about this war. In a late Buddhist chronicle, it is mentioned that a person called Soma, who is likely Shashank, was forced to be confined into his capital by a king called Ha, who is likely Harshavardhan due to Harshavardhan's large army. Though the chronicle mentions that Harshavardhan defeated Shashank, our main text advises us to not rely on this statement as it is another biased source. However, the chronicle does mention that Harshavardhan returned to his kingdom after he concluded his campaign and was not honoured in Shashank's kingdom, which indicates that Harshavardhan did not achieve any dominion over Gaur following his campaign. Other than that,
Hayan Tsang.
briefly mentions the war, stating that King Siladitya, who is likely Harshavardhan, held a court when campaigning in East India where he cut grass to make huts and burned them down when leaving. This indicates that though Harshavardhan likely inflicted extensive damage to Shashank's kingdom when campaigning with Bhaskaravarman, they had to employ a scorched earth tactic when retreating back to their own kingdoms. The name of the city which Shashank confines himself into is mentioned by the chronicle to be called Pundra. Of note is that Pundra is both the name of a kingdom and the name of a city located around the Bogra district in northern Bangladesh. However, the way the chronicle mentions the city of Pundra as being the capital of Shashank's kingdom could indicate that this is just meant to be Karna Suvarna, which is located in the Murshidabad district in western Bengal in India. As there are doubts as to where this city is located, we mentioned in the video that Shashank confined himself in the city of Gaur, which is split between West Bengal and Bangladesh. With regards to the videos mentioned that Gaur was a fortress, this is implied by the fact that the kings of Gaur continued to have a notable role in representing Bengal up until the rise of the Pala Empire. Shashank would have likely fought an asymmetrical defensive war against the two armies to outmaneuver them and wear them down. I mean, look at Bangladesh. It's like the Vietnam of South Asia, the perfect place to launch a guerrilla war. You could easily transform into a tree and ambush an enemy combatant at your leisure. Everyone in Bengali history has done it, so why wouldn't Shashank? In the video, we say that Shashank dies of some illness. However, I should mention here that the historical sources provide a bit more fantastical insight. It is said that as an intolerant follower of the Hindu god Shiva, Shashank persecuted Buddhists. This is so much so that he destroyed 1,600 Buddhist stupas and monasteries, killed thousands of monks and lay followers, destroyed Buddhist footprints, and cut down the tree of wisdom where the Buddha found enlightenment. For his deeds, Shashank was said to have contracted a foul disease whereby his body produced sores and his flesh rotted off. He is said to have incurred a painful death and ended up going down to hell, as described by
Hayan Tsang.
However, the accusation that Shashank was hostile to Buddhists does not hold much water, especially considering that there was a thriving Buddhist community in the suburbs of his own capital city. An archaeological dig in 1962 uncovered that Shashank didn't even destroy one of the most renowned Buddhist monasteries during his time, the Raktammitrika Mahavihara, which was smack bang in his capital city. As Professor Majumdar notes, accusations of Shashank's anti-Buddhist hatred don't come from unbiased sources, so one should be careful to take them at face value. Thank you for watching this video. If you like the fun map of Bangladesh I had in the background, please do buy it from the link in the description as it will help our channel grow. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share as it will help us immensely. And if you want to go that extra step, you could also support us through our Patreon. Catch you all in our next video.